Good afternoon and welcome to the Living Well program. You can find us here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. on KATB 89.3 in Anchorage as well as KJLP 88.9 in Palmer. You can also find us online at katb.org as well as our Facebook page at Living Well Radio, and on iTunes. You can download our podcast there. Again, that's under Living Well. My name is Cammie, and always my lovely...
Did you forget my name?
Almost. Bossy Betty is what was coming to mind.
I knew that was coming. Today I just knew it was coming.
I was trying to clean it up real quick, but then I got all tongue-tied over here. So anyway, welcome back, Betty. I'm always glad you're here to join me.
Are you still reading your book, The Turquoise Table?
Still reading it, making progress, absolutely. Don't have a turquoise table out front yet, but reading the book and being encouraged by it for sure. So
I may have to just go to a turquoise tablecloth.
Yeah, That's fine. That'll do.
That's what I'm thinking.
Absolutely. It's the purpose behind it that matters.
That's
and
right.
The intentional, inviting of community and creating that. So
I have gone as far as to find a friend to come and sit with me in case nobody would come to my table.
I think that's fantastic.
And because I'm scared.
I know somebody who will always meet you there.
You do?
Yes.
Okay, I'll remember that.
His name is Jesus. He'll always be there with you at your table. So anyhow, guys, we are so excited to have Glen and Debbie Clary back in the studio today. We just did not have enough time last week. With a 30-minute show, how can you possibly cover all of the topics when you've got a marriage pastor and his wife here to talk about it and just be completely open and honest about their passion for serving couples through their Marriage Matters class, as well as just kind of, I always love how you guys are willing to do life with other couples. You're willing to sit across the table with them, not only for counseling, but to celebrate the triumphs and the victories in other couples' lives. And so I've always loved that about you guys. So I appreciate how you incorporate that into your ministry, taking it outside of the walls of church and just really doing life with other couples. You guys go camping. You do all kinds of activities with your class. So anyhow, I'm long-winded, but thank you so much for coming back today to the studio.
Good to be here, Cammie.
Yes, good to be here.
I was on a monologue there,
You
wasn't
were.
I?
I was waiting for you to
He's on a
breathe.
roll.
Yeah. Woo! So where did we leave off, Betty? Remind me. What do we want to dive into today?
They had just begun talking about their class, Marriage Matters, and
Yes.
some of the challenges and the issues couples were facing these days, and compared to when they first started. And Pastor Clary had said commitment was the number one challenge.
Yeah. Yep. I can see that for sure. I mean, just the lack of commitment really in anything today. And then that translates into that ultimate commitment of marriage and covenant being in jeopardy of just being indecisive and feeling like you can kind of change your mind at whatever whim you want to. I want to ask you guys, would you think that community, it's kind of the new buzzword today. We keep hearing all this talk about community because you guys referenced in the other show, that's kind of a lost art of just gathering around the table and having good conversation and dialogue and sharpening each other, challenging each other's thoughts and perspectives on things. Would you say that community is important for couples to have with other couples?
Yes, I definitely think it's very important.
And why? Why do you think that's so
one
vital?
One of the reasons I think is accountability. Because if you're in community with other couples and you go and do things together, whether if you go out to eat or you go camping or whatever you do, you're going to get to know more about their lives and stuff. And I think that, you're going to be accountable. And I think it's good to have other couples, And you need to make sure that you get with like-minded couples, though.
Yes.
That have the same kind of values and morals that you do. You definitely make sure that you have the right kind. But if you do, then, if somebody it gets a little bit off kilter or, you can talk to them and you can hash through these things. And I think it's very important.
What do you do in your class to promote community among the couples in your class?
We try to help each, couples out. Like in the past, when we've had military families have to move. Sometimes the wives had to move when the husband's been deployed. We come together as a class. We help them move. We take meals to people, like if they've been in the hospital. We ask for volunteers for that. We just had a couple in our class that had a premature baby, and we came together and got all kinds of stuff for that family. Last summer, we had a family that had twins, and so we just kind of came together and just everybody brought a pack of diapers. Just something simple like that. But, if you're going to have twins, you're going to have double everything.
That's right.
So as the needs arise, we just, jump in as a class. All Glenn has to do is make an announcement. We need this or we need that, or can somebody help here? Or did somebody have a van that they can help go pick up this or that? Or it just seems like everybody just will jump in and help.
Now, do you encourage the couples in your class to meet outside the church building and like go to dinner or go to lunch?
Yes.
Have each other over?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Couples go bowling together. They go fishing together, camping together, that kind of thing. And then Debbie and I, one of the great things that we instituted when we first started this class is to double date with the couples. And so any couple that wants to double date with us, we'll go out to dinner with them and just have a blast. We always want to find out how they met with one another and how did they get together to, get married, and what some of their struggles, what are they doing in life, what are their goals, their dreams, their aspirations in life, and stuff like that. So it helps us connect with them on a personal basis. And then I've always found that the Bible is so accurate when it says, listen, when you're doing life together, and life, I mean serving and helping and studying God's Word together, serving other people together, and playing together. When you're doing those things together, to me, that's community. Mm-hmm. And I think we provide as many opportunities as possible. We have couples activities. We have family activities. Sometimes the kids come. Sometimes we have sitters for the kids, and then the couples just participate in the activities that we have. And it's just a variety that we try to do throughout the year to get connected and stay connected.
Okay, I have a question that I've always wanted to ask. One time, you had an activity with your class, and you had all these games, and all that I saw of it was shopping carts. And I've never found out what you did with the shopping carts.
That was called Couples Challenge, and what we did is we had a lot of the couples divided up into teams, 4 different teams, and they did all these different challenges as a team, and they would earn points. The shopping carts were used as horses for jousting competition. We took those swimming pool noodles and put out on the end of the swimming pool noodles some ketchup, and then the husband or wife would be inside the shopping cart, and the other one would push it like a horse, and then the other one would come the other way. And if you got ketchup on you were gone, and the other team won. So it was just a fun way of doing something that night. And so
I've always wanted to know that. I've never asked anybody, and I just happened to think about that.
That was fun.
What a better time than
And
now.
can I just tell you, you do not want to be the one in the shopping cart with Jeremiah driving it.
No. Is that the voice of experience, Cammie?
That's when we just sit out and we're judges.
Get pretty wild there.
Boy, did it ever.
We learned we had to pad those things up, didn't we?
Yes. Yeah. Lessons learned on that.
But it's so good for couples to get out together and laugh
Oh,
yes.
and have fun together.
Yeah. In fact, I think this is a great time to mention, I would imagine you've piqued somebody's interest at this point. So let us know, Pastor Glen, how anybody listening could get in contact with you to find out more about the Marriage Matters class.
Of course, anybody is welcome to come to our Marriage Matters class. We meet at 10 o'clock in the cafeteria at the Anchorage Baptist Temple on every Sunday morning. And we're usually dealing with some topic in the Bible, some principle in the Bible that also relates to relationship. And we try to bring it back around to what God says about relationships. So anyone is welcome to come and visit us there. We actually open at 9:30 with the Heavenly Cafe, and there's refreshments. We encourage you to bring your kids. We have the Veggie Tales going on, and then at about 10 minutes till, they can go to their Sunday school class, and then you can be in ours at 10 o'clock when we start. Anyone can get in touch with me by sending me an email at gclary, C-L-A-R-Y, at ancbt.org. That's my email address, and I'll give it to you again, gclary at gclary at ancbt.org. And if you'll send me an email, if you need our help with counseling, if you just want to know more about the Marriage Matters class, if you want to come and try it, maybe you're a little reluctant because you don't know anybody, let Debbie and I connect with you and first and comfort you a little bit before you come. We'd love to have you. We have a very open and embracing group of couples in our class, and they just love new people. So we'd love to see anybody and everybody that wants to come.
I want to ask you, I didn't send you this question in advance, but so there's a woman listening, and she's intrigued. She'd like to attend this class. Maybe her husband's not real keen on church. What advice do you have for her in trying to get him to attend, or what's her position in that?
2 points there. I usually tell the spouse who comes and their other spouse isn't here, well, now you can go home and tell your spouse what Pastor Glen says you have to do, because you missed the lesson today. So I usually kid them about that. But I encourage the spouses to come, because we do have several spouses who are there by themselves, and someone would always say, well, I don't want to sit by myself. And I said, well, I remind them that Debbie has to sit by herself every Sunday, and so someone needs to sit around her so they can come and sit with her, and I'm up there speaking, and we would love to have them come try it. And usually what happens is once the wife starts to come and starts implementing the principles that we're teaching and the things, the husband sees a change in their life. They get more intrigued about it, or we have an activity that might interest the husband to come to, and she goes home and shares that, and he comes and he sees that it's not all about sitting around in a prayer group singing Kumbaya and praising God, and you're actually learning about life, and it breaks the ice a little bit, and they start coming, and they see that, listen, this is something that I can do, and so we just encourage you to come.
Okay. And so then along those lines too, maybe there's a couple listening that attends church. They come to the regular service, maybe at ABT, maybe at another church. Why do you think Sunday school is important, particularly a couples class for couples to fellowship in?
Well, at our church, basically, the 11 o'clock hour is evangelistic. And when you come to a specialized class like ours, you're going to learn biblical principles, but how to apply them to your marriage. And I think that's the key component that we do. I work very hard in my study about, okay, what are we presenting today, but how does it affect us as couples? And I try to drive home those points. And so I think it's very important, because if we're not constantly working on our marriages, the devil's going to get in the middle of it. It's going to drive a wedge between us, and pretty soon we're going to be discouraged about our relationship, and we might even be headed toward divorce court.
In your guys' opinion, I want to ask you, what is required of a husband and wife in order to have a successful marriage? That's a kind of a loaded question, but what would you say are the top 3 qualities or aspects that are super important as ingredients to have that successful marriage?
I think probably the most important thing, other than knowing that God's at the center of your marriage to begin with, I think that's a given, but it's to not be selfish. I mean, almost every problem in marriage is caused from selfishness. I want things done my way, and if they're not done my way, then I'm not going to be happy. So in marriage, there's a lot of give and take. I mean, you have to compromise. You're not always going to get your way, and I think if you realize that going into it, it's going to be a whole lot easier. If you realize, I need to care more for this other person than I care for myself in this relationship. I think that's key. Other than making sure that God's the center, and always remember that if you have God at the center of your marriage, as you start going, if you're both going towards God, you're going to become closer to each other. If He's at the center, and it's like a triangle, and you're at each end of the bottom of the triangle, as you're going closer, both of you seeking God together, you're going to be closer to each other. And that's going to solve a lot of your problems too.
I usually define it, Cammie, and I appreciate Debbie's answer, and I agree with it, but I define it as with an acronym called TUF, T-U-F. And I say marriage is tough. And you have to have those 3 ingredients, T-U-F. You have to have trust, you have to have understanding, and you have to have forgiveness. And if you don't have those 3 things in your marriage is doomed. Because you have to trust one another. In order to do that, you have to do what Debbie says, put one another first, like Philippians chapter 2, verse 3 and 4 says. Think about the other person before you think about things of yourself. And then you have to have understanding. What are her needs? What does she need? And then she has to think about, what does he need? And how do I fulfill those needs? A lot of that deals with your love language, your temperament, your personality and stuff. And it's different for every couple. And so you have to research those things and learn them if you haven't learned those things, because these aren't things, as I said last week, not things that we learn in school. And then the final thing is, of course, forgiveness. You can't harbor bitterness. Marriage should make you better, not bitter. And you can't harbor those things in the past and always bring those skeletons out of the closet. You got to bury those things, put the dirt over the grave, and move on, and not bring those up again. And that's what forgiveness is all about. And it doesn't mean that the other person was right. It just releases you from the burden of having that unforgiveness in your heart and in your life, and carrying that burden all along. Continue in life.
That's good advice. Good acronym to remember. Marriage is tough. TUF.
It's easy to remember.
It is, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
If you had the opportunity, if there was a young man, he was thinking about, it was time for him to get married. He was starting to look around to see if there was a young girl he wanted to date, and you had the opportunity to counsel him. I'd like both of you to answer this. What would you tell him?
A young man looking to a young woman.
He doesn't have a girlfriend yet.
Oh, he doesn't have a girlfriend.
No,
what he should be looking for? I think he should be looking for, first, of course, most of all, Christian, but then somebody that's willing to be submissive. Not that the person's going to be a doormat, but somebody that is not so independent that they're not going to, he needs to see how she responds to her mom and dad. Mm-hmm. Is she obedient to them? Something like that. That's one of the things.
Mm-hmm.
My answer to that, Betty, is that, and this would apply to any single person, male or female, is that they need to honestly sit down and take a sheet of paper and say, what are the characteristics of an individual that I'm looking for? And they would write all of those down and get their parents' help or their guardians' help in this, or a friend, a good Christian friend or counselor's help with this. And yeah, go ahead and list the things. He's got to be tall and handsome and good looking, or she's got to be beautiful, and all that kind of stuff. But beyond that, what are their characteristics? Do they love the Lord? Are they serving the Lord? Are they just attending church for a show? Do they bring their Bible? Do they read their Bible? Is their Bible marked up? Are they curious about the things of God from the Bible? Those are telltale signs. How does he treat his mom? How does she treat her father? How has her father been treating her? You investigate those kind of things. You think about those things, and you ask those questions during dating time. And you get this whole long list of things that you're looking for. And are they kind? Are they considerate? Do they, what intelligent level are they? Do they have goals in life? If you answer all of these, there's a ton of questions. I have a sheet that's got about 104 questions on it. And it's just things that those who are single and are dating should be asking about the other person. Not that you're interrogating them, but this is the one that you're looking for. And whether or not the connection is going to work. And it kind of helps you cut the emotion out of it to some degree. And I understand there has to be emotion in it. You have to have the love and the feeling and all that. But it also gives you some very, very good clarity on evaluating the individual that you're dating. And that's what I would recommend that singles do, whether they're male or female.
Very good. I'd like to see your list of questions.
That'll be another show.
Yes. Hey,
maybe we should put them on the. We should put those on the website, on the Facebook page.
Well, I think we'll do another show and then do that. So, Pastor Glen, you answered for both the young woman or the young man and kind of the things that they should be looking for, the questions they should be asking. Debbie, you said that you would, advise that young man be looking for a young lady who's a Christian and would also be willing to submit. What would you tell the young woman looking to date, intentionally dating for a marriage partner?
Well, he kind of stole one of my ideas was that, see about how does she, the dad, I mean the mom. Let's see, you're talking
to the girl.
To the young lady.
To the girl, yeah.
Yeah.
How does he treat his mom?
Yeah.
Is he kind to her?
I think that is a huge topic to talk about, because I think it's one that's tremendously overlooked is what, and you mentioned it, Pastor Glen, but not only how they treat their parents, but how have the parents been treating them? Because they're going to bring that into the relationship, whatever damage or, joy is in that. That's going to be
baggage.
Brought in.
Yeah.
And we all have it. Let's face it. Let's be honest here.
And it's not
we all have it, and we just, how do you deal with it?
Yeah.
How is that individual dealing with that baggage?
Yeah, it's not that you're going to rule them out, but I think being aware of it, it's just like why we do background checks. It's not that you're going to eliminate them, but at least you know what you've got on your hands. So that's excellent. Very good.
The other thing on that, Betty, in my opinion, is you've got to remember, and this is, again, something that people are not taught, is according to the Word of God, men have a natural tendency to be slothful, to be lazy, and that's something that she has to consider. To what degree is he? Is he going to be a couch potato once I marry him and expect me to do everything? Is he going to help with the laundry? Is he going to help with the dishes? Is he going to help around the house with the kids? Is he going to be engaged in the family at all? The other thing about women, the Bible tells us, is that women have a natural tendency to want to take control. And so he has to ask the question, is she going to be overbearing? Is she going to want to just control me and the family and everything? And it's okay to, if it's agreed upon, okay, honey, you take care of this aspect of the relationship and the family, and honey, you take care of this. That's okay, but you can't be dominant and overbearing as a wife if it's rubbing the husband the wrong way, if it's not a good fit. And so you have to ask those questions too, because those are very, very, very important concerns that the Bible is very clear on, from Genesis into Ephesians chapter 5 and so forth.
One of the things that I have heard single women talk about, there might be a young man that they've been seeing quite often, but he will not acknowledge that they're dating. They may spend, 2 or 3 evenings together per week for several weeks, but they're still not dating. They're just friends. He always seems to want to go back to, it's just a friendship, whereas she's wanting to move on, for the relationship to progress. But I see the girls just sitting around waiting. Instead of going on with their life, they're waiting for this young man to say, okay, we're a couple now, or whatever. But he seems to be, they just seem to play the field or something. And I don't know how to encourage them, the girls, to go on with their life, instead of just sitting around waiting.
Some of that takes some counseling, Betty, to take care of. You have to delve into their past, how their father treated them. I'm talking about the lady now, the young lady, and see about the commitment level or the example that she had from her mom. And some of that takes some deep counseling to get over. And sad that women today do not have the role models of a dad that they should be having. It's just our society's got this all upside down, and it's so sad to see in the life of many young ladies that they just feel that they don't have enough confidence in themselves and believe that they're worth more than how these men are treating them, and that's a shame. They're not trinkets, they're not hood ornaments, they're not prizes that you have on your arm. I mean, these are women with feelings that God has created in His image that need to be treated with respect and honor and love. And when you're not, then it's a shame, just because these ladies are paid a little bit of attention from these men. They just seem to gravitate and stay with them, even though those men are not willing to take it to the next step or the further steps on. A lot of that takes some counseling and somebody talking to them concerning what's going on in your heart of hearts.
You're so right. I mean, I just see that happening over and over and over again, and trying to instill in them that they are worth so much more.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's the challenge is, our young girls are going into relationships waiting to be told who they are and what their value is versus knowing who they are and what their value is before they go into that relationship. And that's what they're waiting for. Tell me what I'm worth. And that's definitely a huge issue.
And the value is more than how many friends you have on Facebook.
Yes.
Facebook really destroys a lot of relationships. If you're patterning your choice of an individual for a life partner with Facebook and what's there, then you're going in a totally wrong way. Facebook is, and I've got Facebook, and it's got a purpose, but it is not for this purpose.
Yeah.
That's interesting you brought that up, because that was one of the things we wanted to get into was social media. What effects have you seen it have on marriages versus, say, 10 years ago?
Oh, a big effect. And I'm like him, I I see the negative and I see the positive, but I almost believe there's more negative than there is positive, because back in our day, I mean, we didn't have any of these, social media to compare our marriages to, compare our parenting to, and these ladies these days, and the guys too, they go on there and they compare. Well, look at their marriage. Theirs is great, but I mean, you can put anything out there, and most people just put their good out there. They don't put their bad. So they put their one good day that they're having, but it's just terrible to try to compare yourself to that, because it's not real. Facebook is fake book. and it's hard because and like you said, these women don't feel valuable. They don't feel like they're worth anything because they're comparing themselves to all these other people on Facebook. That it's sad.
I also see it affecting us in another way, and that's in the area of communication.
Yes.
Oh, yes,
I
that
think
too.
Facebook shuts people down in communicating face to face, and there is nothing that can replace a conversation that you have with an individual on a face to face basis. And many wives will just succumb to being on Facebook when their husband needs some attention, or vice versa. The husband will be on Facebook when their wife needs some attention, and that's a shame. A game, what your friends are doing, and what's going on in their life on Facebook is not as important as what your husband might need or your wife might need. And that's a danger too, I see, of social media.
So speaking of face-to-face and just the value of that conversation, not everybody meets their future spouse in a church choir these days, like you guys did. In fact, there's something called online dating. Right. So as a marriage pastor, what do you think of online dating?
Well, I think it's great, as long as you follow some of the things that we've talked about in these two shows. We've given some great insights as to what to do. Now, I haven't issued that 104 point list, but
let's make it 105.
Okay. It is great. We've got couples in our Marriage Matters class who met online, and they went through those online dating things, and it's working for them, and it worked. People would tell me, well, Glenn, how did you know that you were going to marry Debbie the first time you saw her? I said, I don't know. I just knew. And they said, well, it's not true. Well, it was for me, and it worked out.
Apparently, it's been how many years?
Yeah,
almost 42.
Almost 42 years. So who am I to judge whether somebody you met on social media is somebody you should marry or you shouldn't marry, There's a lot of other checks and times that should go through. You shouldn't just meet them on social media and go get married, but there's a lot of other steps that should happen.
Do you think you can really get to know somebody online, just with that online
Not totally.
communication?
No, that's why I say there's more steps to that.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that replaces face-to-face conversation. I get so tickled at people when they give you a text even. You read the text, and sometimes you can misread the text by reading into the text. And you might say, well, that person's mad at me, by the way they wrote that, or that, and they didn't mean anything like that,
That's right.
Yeah.
And,
you can't read into the emotion from
no,
a text.
You can't.
Well, and two, even just talking about the show here, and some people like the questions that we're going to ask in advance, but I really like those more raw opportunities to ask people questions, and I think that same thing kind of falls in line with dating. There's nothing like that immediate response and seeing the facial response that kind of comes with that answer versus having time to think about, how am I going to respond to that? So,
and body language,
Yes.
all of that. So.
Yes.
I know this book we've been talking about that we're reading, the lady had the idea of creating an eye basket. And so whenever she's sitting at her table, the turquoise table, she'll put out the eye basket, or when her family's getting ready to have a meal, and everybody puts their phones in it.
Oh,
and
yes,
nobody can take their phone out until
till
the conversation or the meal's over.
I heard Chick-fil-A did that at some of their stores and put what they call the chicken coop on the table. And as families would sit and have their orders brought and then they would sit and eat, they were encouraged to put all of their cell phones in this chicken coop, they called it, on their tables.
That's a
and
great
I thought
idea.
That was a great idea,
Yeah.
But you go to restaurants and there's a lot of couples sitting there and they're both on their phones and they're not talking to one another. Well, what's the sense in going out to a restaurant if you don't communicate with one another?
You just sit at your house and do that.
Yeah, exactly. So.
I think I've talked about this maybe a time or two, but it was really intriguing to read an article about how our etiquette will catch up with the technology that's kind of landed in our culture, and that will hopefully come as a shift. We'll start adopting some of that proper etiquette and manners that follows all of this technology that has bombarded us in our marriages too. So hopefully that will be to come. Well, somehow we have filled up a whole nother show, haven't we, Betty?
I didn't have any doubt.
And we already are looking at having them back just to talk about singles
questions.
and dating and those questions. I think that would be an awesome topic to cover and bring them back for. So we want to thank you guys so much for joining us again here in the studio. I want to give you one more opportunity to invite anybody that's listening to your Marriage Matters class. So kind of give us the 411, one of you, on how they can do that.
All right, everybody's welcome to come to our Marriage Matters class. It meets at 10 o'clock on Sunday mornings in the cafeteria at the Anchorage Baptist Temple. We're open to any couples that want to come, any single individuals. If you're engaged, newlyweds, anyone. If your spouse doesn't want to come, you come. We would love to have you also. And if you'll come, we'd get a chance to know you. If you want to contact me, you can contact me and Debbie at Clary, that's GCLARY, at ancbt.org.
And you can also contact him at the Anchorage Baptist Temple. That phone number is 907-333-6535. And just want you to stay in tune with all of the things that they have coming up. There's going to be a Financial Peace University seminar coming up. So if you just get plugged in with Pastor Glen and Debbie Clary, you can stay tuned in to whatever's coming their way. And we want to thank you again for joining us for another Living Well program. And you can find us here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. on KATB 89.3 in Anchorage, as well as KJLP 88.9 in Palmer. And be sure to listen online if that's how you'd like to listen in at katb.org. And you can look us up on our Facebook page at Living Well Radio. We'll see you next Wednesday.